Hey everybody, I'm going to record a part 2 offline here from the live stream earlier. If you were watching that, you probably saw me get a call from the daycare that Izzy wasn't feeling well. So I went to go pick her up, and she's down for her nap now. So I'm just going to kind of finish up because the goal of that original live stream was to basically upgrade the Laravel application, and I feel like some of the critical pieces that are part of my process that go beyond running the shifts themselves, I didn't really get a chance to demonstrate, or at least kind of rushed through them. So let me just take 20 minutes here or so and try to finish this out in an acceptable place to give back to the client and have them continue the work from there. So in the absence of test, like I mentioned, one of the things I like to do is run artisan route list. And this is nice because it does touch all of the important pieces of the application. For example, the middleware, the controllers, it actually instantiates them, checks that the methods are there, that the middleware is wired up, that anything dependency injected into the constructor of a controller or a method is able to be resolved. So because it does all of that, it actually touches a lot of your application. So think of it kind of like code coverage, like an easy code coverage path. If we were to graph that running route list and saw code coverage, you would probably see that because controllers are such a large part of your application, or the gateway into your application, of course, that 70, 80, 90% of your application is touched or covered. So again, in the complete absence of tests, that at least lets me know that the application is bootable and would be able to be reviewed by the client. So that's kind of as far as I can take it. The rest of it is the client reviewing the features themselves. But the things I didn't get into were running like namespace model and the fixer and things like that. So let me demonstrate those items real quick. So again, picking up exactly where we left off, I've just dumped out of Docker here, and let's do a git diff-w. And we should see kind of the things that I did here. So what I'm going to do is basically just kind of clean up these commits real fast. So let's do a git -p. I am going to drop that in. So let's do git commit -m, and this will be leverage package auto discovery. So I removed any of those service providers that are hard-coded in the application configuration because they're not necessary anymore. They're going to be auto-loaded through Laravel's package auto discovery. So for those reasons, oh great, I'm getting another call. That one's not important. Okay, so let's do some more of this here. So let's do a git rm config excel, git commit -m will remove old excel config, pretty obvious. And then these were the correcting of the routes. So for some reason those didn't leverage the API. That must be namespaced in the route service provider, so we can go check that here in just a second. And then this was just a case where the middleware didn't get collapsed the way it should have. Oh, the namespace API is there, I see. So that's a little bit off. So we can actually clean that up even farther. And this is where, and this is something in Shift I was going to look at. I've noticed this reported a few other times, but it's just not that it's not that common. One in 1,000 literally seem to do this. So I might use this original code as a test case to see why it might be dumping it in there. But let's finish fixing some of this up, because for some reason it did not seem to pull out this guest namespace, which is kind of weird. So let me clean that up a little bit. So let's get back into PHP Storm, and let's look at some of these other items real fast. So let's go to the web config, and real quick, anywhere in here, namespace guest is not needed anymore because it's prefixed in that already. Again, these namespaces should have been pulled out, so I think this is a good opportunity for Shift. It actually lined them up correctly, but it's a little weird that it left them there. So let's just kind of clean these up ourselves. And I can add this to shifts, add these to kind of shifts test cases to see why those might have got left the way they did. All right, and anytime there's just a raw group with nothing, it's a little silly, so we can just collapse those back out. And let's just search this for namespace one more time. Okay, nothing in there, but I do know that there's some left here. This is that API bit. So these were just namespaced, which explains why those were a little off. But it's funny because these got set with API, but the rest didn't. So just to kind of make sure that these do the same thing, let's do that and kill those. All right, and that should clean up whatever we're missing here. All right, that looks good. So we'll do a GST, and let's just quickly kind of take a peek at that. So we don't need to do those anymore because they're kind of relatively imported now. And again, we're just removing those namespace things. Shift should have done that. But again, it seems like there's some syntax in this file that clearly was throwing it off. It put the use statements in the wrong spot. It didn't clean up the namespaces. Something strange was going on there. So my guess is the parser choked on this file for some reason, and as such, it fell back to string manipulation and therefore didn't do as thorough as a job. So let's just clean that up. So git commit -m, cleanup route registration, or well, just clean up routes, it's fine for now. All right, let's push this up. Technically speaking, this is running Laravel 9. The one last thing I want to do, I did do one thing off stream. We had actually killed that package, this Nexmo package, and in the meantime, I rotated that app key that might have been exposed, and I went ahead and ran this for the Nexmo package, this Laravel 9 compatibility. And anytime you see one of these from Shift, it happens for, you know, the most popular 300 packages within the Laravel community, but I can run it on any package that's out there. So if you ever notice a package doesn't have compatibility and you believe that it could very easily, you know, just message me on Twitter or whatever, I'm glad to run it. But part of it gives you some instructions for how to add this fork until Nexmo were to merge this. So we can go down here somewhere. We'll just put it under config for repositories, throw in the appropriate comma there. I'm gonna put Docker back up so we can make sure this all still works. And then we're gonna bring back in this Nexmo Laravel. And what we can do is just put this alphabetically, save ourselves some headaches, and there it is. And we're gonna reference this dev Laravel 9 compatibility. So what that does is reference this Laravel 9 branch that has been pushed out onto GitHub inside of the Laravel Shift repository. So basically what Shift does, it forks the you know, open source repo, it runs the manipulations that make it Laravel 9 compatible, and then it opens a PR for Nexmo to ultimately merge. And that's just a case for Nexmo to be able to test it, make sure they can make any final tweaks of their own. So with that said, let's get back into declamp and run composer update, and that should resolve that package that we temporarily removed while I was rushing to complete after some of the daycare fiasco. So Docker should be starting up. It looks like it's still starting, so let's give it just a sec. And while that's waiting, let's clean up some of these 1 million tabs here. All right. Yeah, we're going to run the fixer next, and I'd really like to run the Laravel namespace models as well. Okay, but first, composer update. Let's see if this actually installs that Nexmo library. All right, and it does, good. So that kind of proves that the compatibility is there, and again, since this did have PHP 8 and Laravel 8 compatibility beforehand, I'm not too worried that much changed in regards to this package where it would suddenly quit working. But again, the client can help test that and maybe even report back on the Shift PR that, hey, I'm running this in production in my app, and it seems to work, to give Nexmo maybe a little bit of encouragement to get that merged so we don't have to use this fork. And again, if you were using this fork, you can of course keep using this fork if it works, but eventually you're probably going to want the updates from Nexmo directly. So you could just cut this out and then change your configuration, or sorry, your constraint to be, whatever Nexmo tags at that point, 4.0 or whatever it is. All right, so let's let Docker very slowly generate all those optimized files. Oh, and this will give us a good chance to talk about that package discovery too. I kind of glossed over that a bit, but we saw that all those service providers were referenced in a hard-coded fashion in the app config. But we can see here that they're discovered by package discovery here. So all those things I removed, the CSS inliner, Spatie stuff, Sentry stuff, the log viewer, Excel, all those Nexmo, they're all automatically discovered, so there's no reason to register those service providers directly. In fact, it's bad form to do it, because if those ever change names, then it's more maintenance for you, as we saw in the previous live stream. It couldn't find that Sentry service provider, probably because it changed names. Well, clearly Sentry loads on its own, so no reason to worry about that. All right, let me kill Docker to save some CPU cycles, and let's do a git add dot, git commit -m. We'll re-add Nexmo Laravel. All right, and now, to our knowledge, this is Laravel 9 compatible as the application was before. Again, there might be some additional tweaks to make to other packages, but technically speaking, you can run composer install, you can run rsyn commands, you can interact with the application. And that's probably as far as I will take it, being unfamiliar. But let's run some of the extra cool stuff that I like from Shift to kind of really give it that final bit of polish. So let's merge this pull request, confirm merge. We're going to go full screen JMac here for a second to avoid any more tokens being leaked. And let me get out here, and next let's run this namespace models. So we're upgraded, fully upgraded, nothing else we have to do necessarily, but again, these are kind of some of those additional touches that I like to do anytime I'm doing human shifts or on my own projects. So just to be thorough, again, let's finish running these ourselves. So we're running the namespace model bit real quick. It's taking just a second. I don't want to risk anything popping on screen, since I already took the time to rotate all those keys and tokens. So let's just wait till it's all the way done. All right, it should be out of the way now. Let's go ahead and pop this back up. There we go, cool. All right, so we should see, oh, it's not done just yet. We'll give it just a second. We should see the namespace model pull request open up here any minute. There it is. Okay, and all this really does, as we go through and scroll through here, all this really does is go in and get all those user models and kind of move them to the appropriate location. In this case, appropriate, the modern app models namespace. And so we see that it not only moved them all under this models bit, but it went in and looked for any references to those within your application. Now, this may not get everything. You could actually have references in env configuration, or even the database for polymorphic models. If you're not using a morph map, I recommend using morph maps if you're using polymorphic models, just to avoid anything like this where hard references to namespaces would be elsewhere in the code. So that's kind of what this warning message is here. There's nothing more for us to do here necessarily, but I am just gonna pull this down, and we will make sure that our top directory looks good, and it seems like it does once I move eCam out of the way. Yeah, I don't see any top level models floating around here, so this is good to merge in my book. And let's run the fixer next. So let me delete this branch, just so we can reuse it for Shift. Again, full screen JMac. And let me run the fixer, and then we'll test that work a little bit more, and I'll run some of the static analysis inside of PHP Storm that I might have glossed over in part 1. So let me get the fixer queued up here. That is the LF, Laravel fixer. And again, just to not be full screen JMac the whole time, let's switch back here. We're past anything potentially private. And what the fixer does, again, is you can watch the video on it, but basically it's going to open up a pull request with some of the optional yet modern, adopted by the community conventions that Laravel does at this point. So again, not something I would want to force upon you during a regular upgrade. I think there could be some blowback from users on that. Oh, you know, we don't really craft our code that way, or we like using global facades, or whatever kind of code style or Laravel preference or principles or practices they might do. So again, that's what this is going to do. Let's get back here, and we'll just kind of review some of these a little bit quickly in respect to Shift, but then we'll pull things down again and run it through static analysis to make sure artisan route list didn't break, make sure that PHP Storm cleaned up some of those references that we saw before that weren't resolving class names and stuff. And I think at that point, given that this was kind of non-profit pro bono work, we'll stop there. That'll put us about an hour and a half in, upgraded from 5.4 all the way up to Laravel 9, so that's pretty cool. All right, well, looks like this one's taking just a second. Let's make sure it didn't fail. No, it's just taking a minute to push all the commits, so we'll give it just a minute. Things like the linter and the fixer and the test generator, they have a lot more comments because they're kind of, again, guiding you and educating you on modern conventions and things you may want to do to your code. And as such, it kind of lists a lot of controllers and things like that. We'll see this here in just a second, but okay, so again, lots of files changed. We got this global facade thing, so I talked about this briefly in part 1, but anywhere where you're referencing a facade and a global capacity, it kind of just cleans that up. There might be more that it missed, but we can check those again locally, but that's kind of an example. Leverage command auto-loading. Again, there's no reason to pull out commands yourself anymore. Laravel finds those automatically inside of your application. So modernized blade's a nice one. What this is going to do is just look for opportunities to use new blade tags that probably weren't available in Laravel 5.4, but again, it's just not something you would do. It's just kind of that little polish on the application that you may not do unless you run something like Shift, right? So this @JSON directive is one. The method directive is kind of a cool one. Instead of having to remember what's that field name and is it hidden and what are the values, you can just say method put, and much like the CSRF token, Laravel figures out the appropriate HTML to dump out to the page. So I really like those. Those are pretty cool. This is one Mohammed really kind of pushed a couple years ago, but just using the array instead of this pipe string, it's just more modern to break these out. So again, a small little thing that the fixer is going to do, that not necessarily is required as part of any Laravel upgrade, but again, something you may wish to adopt. Here's kind of the bigger one that this is really known for. Anywhere it can leverage the injected request object, and what we're talking about here is all controllers get reference to the request object automatically injected into the method. So a lot of the times it's nice to just be able to use that directly instead of pulling in a facade or pulling in a helper or whatever. So that it just goes in and analyzes any opportunities to be able to use those where you're probably already using it anyways. This is an existing code, so why not continue to use it and be consistent in your code? That's kind of nice. We got fluid request chains, so again, redirect to all these new helpers and chains that you can do. And then finally, another really nice one that may be in a future Shift, but it basically goes in and figures out any opportunities where you're using an env directly and adopts the config to use instead. So in this case, this application was using Mailgun's secret directly through the env inside of the code base when it really should be using config. And again, it does that for performance reasons. This allows you to do config cache, and now you would have the ability to get that directly. Same thing here, mail from name, all these existed automatically. For any that don't exist, it actually ends up pushing these into a config settings and then leverages that wherever possible. Now, pusher key is probably something that could be used. It doesn't necessarily have to be a setting, but again, maybe they were using it instead of pusher app key, I think is the actual name. So that can be cleaned up, but again, I'll let the client do that. So here's all those comments that we were getting, basically cruddy controllers. This is a talk Adam Wathan gave. It's linked here for you to watch. It just kind of talks about all sorts of things that, again, you might want to look at. Here's that env thing about performance that we were mentioning. And then there's still some files that are doing the global facades. So we may go in and fix this ourselves. So I'm just going to delete this. We're going to bring up Docker in the background. And let's go ahead and do a git pull. And let's finish running that inspection that we had before. So hopefully if we run this again now, we're really not going to get as many, because Nexmo is back and we've run it through kind of our global facades bit there. So let's see what we might have broken here. Okay, so there are places where it looks like Shift may have missed some opportunities to clean this up in comments. So app bar didn't get cleaned up here. That's interesting. Did I not merge? No, I did. I wonder why that didn't get picked up in the comments. Shift could have done a little better there. Let's see if we can fix this real quick. It's probably just mostly in comments, so let's write a little regex to see if we can fix this. So let's turn on regular expressions, and let's escape this. And what this would be any bit there, and let's just kind of peruse these real quick. Since I just fired up Docker, things are running really, really slow. Yeah, I think we can fix this. So let's change this to pipe, app, models, and then $1. Let's see if that is going to do what we want here. I think we're going to need to do that. There we go. And we can see here from our little example replacement that would show up as app models day users space, and that's what we want. So let's replace all. And again, I'll take a look at why Shift may not have gotten those the way we want. But now if we rerun this, hopefully we don't get 124, we only get 22. That's a lot better. I think we can fix the rest of these by hand. So I'm curious why Nexmo client isn't coming across. Oh, did we might have only added Laravel and not the client as well. That's interesting. That's okay. All right, Nexmo message. Yeah, see, Nexmo messages used to exist, but they don't exist anymore. I wonder if, yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna leave that broken on purpose. That might just be a bad reference. Prevent maintenance. Illuminate foundation prevent. I'm feeling like as middleware. Let's just bring this. Let's just default this. Something strange happened here. PHP artisan 9.x. I think I got the wrong thing. There we go. Let's pull this down instead. Oh. It doesn't like, I'm not trying to run artisan, I'm trying to run default route or default file. There's the problem. So GDF, there we go. Something strange is happening here. It's like Laravel 9's not installed because it's not picking up prevent requests during maintenance mode. It's not picking up the facade route either, which is very strange. It should definitely pick up that route. So we can bring in an Excel here. Did I pull down? Oh, come on. Really? Git pull. All right, I definitely have the latest changes. Okay, let me, instead of doing full screen JMac, I am going to just pause the recording real quick and get all these tokens in so I can keep downloading or using Composer, because apparently I hit the rate limit. Okay, I got the token in there and allowed this to run, and if you watch part 1, you probably remember a crap load of little yellow warnings here before about Vonage and Nexmo and so forth like that. So a lot of those have been cleaned up now that we have that package as well. This finished running, and in doing so, oops, I killed PHP Storm because it was still being weird about some of those Laravel bits, so I just kind of want to let it re-index. I think I'm running like a beta version of PHP Storm for their latest, so that's probably why. Maybe it's a little buggy or laggy with Docker, I'm not sure, but let's let this re-index and see if it gets down to just those things. So the one last thing I do notice here is it looks like app models mail back in contact actually got moved during that app migration, which is incorrect. So we'll go fix that here in just a second. So this, any references to back-end contact should probably not be under app models mail. So let's fix that. And that was probably just an overzealous replacement there. So this is why I like doing these human shifts, is because it lets me dog food the product and I get to see more like boundary cases and things of that nature, which is good because that helps me improve, right? Because even though I send out the emails that are like, hey, let me know how Shift did, what are some of the manual things you had to do, not everyone replies to those. Again, given the low cost of Shift, some people just accept that there's some things that they need to change and they fix it and they go on their way, and they don't want to spend any more time on it. And that's totally cool. But when I do get to use it myself, or I do get that feedback, it is invaluable because it allows me to catch and fix these kinds of things. So let's just fix this reference because it is incorrect. So it's not under models anymore, it's under that. And if we go back here and run Composer update yet again, we should see that little warning go away. And let's run our undefined class again on the app directory. I'm not going to ignore the PHP bits just yet. Okay, so we do have some more references in the doc blocks. So yeah, eloquent, that's wrong. That should really be model, is what it's trying to say. It really shouldn't need mix in there because it extends model. So I'm actually going to get rid of that. So Nexmo client's still missing models. Whoops. Models bar. All right. So yeah, all these. I'm just going to be thorough here while we're waiting on Composer to catch up. I'm not going to fix every single one of these. Again, a lot of these are just in the wrong spot. All right, we're starting to get to things that don't really matter or are repetitive. So, okay, API controller mail. That's before me. That is not that is not a Shift broken thing. Let's just get rid of all these. All right. Yeah, there's no need to do that mix-in tag if you're actually extending it. All right. I think we're getting pretty far down the list now. Just a few more. Yeah, there we go. We're towards the end now. Let's just fix all these by hand here. It's interesting that it got model's job, but it didn't get some of the other stuff. Why doesn't it like that? Oh, qualifier's unnecessary. I see. That's okay. All right, let's rerun this again, and we should have a lot less. Okay, 14 I can deal with because some of these actually existed beforehand. So the only thing that's still kind of broken are the incorrect references that existed beforehand or this Nexmo message. So what I would do in this case is give it back to the client, say, hey, if you're using PHP Storm, run this inspection, and you may want to fix these. If they're not using PHP Storm, I would say, hey, search for Nexmo message, any Nexmo references, and make sure those are up to date. Okay, so with that, we should still be able to run Artisan, hopefully. Again, in the absence of tests, these are just my quick check of the application. So Artisan route list. So hopefully removing those namespaces and so forth, we see that route list is still running. So all those cleanups that we did to the routes, all the app model names we just changed, didn't seem to break the things that were running for us before. So with that, this is where I would kind of end my work on the fixer and the updating of the application and start to begin to hand it off to the client to say, hey, look at these things. Here's a small list, hopefully, of things for you to check. And at that point, they could either say, oh, we want you to finish it up, or they can say, oh, yeah, we got it. Thanks a lot. Awesome. A lot of times people just want to see light at the end of the tunnel. They look at going from 5.4 to 9.x as just too big of a job. They kind of overestimate the challenge of that. Even if they were going to use Shift, they can't really use it as efficiently as me necessarily. They might not know some of the tricks I just went over in this live stream. So hopefully in the future they can watch the live stream and get some ideas. Or again, just have me or someone else more familiar with the Shift, more familiar with the upgrade, do this kind of grunt work for them and put the application in a place where they're like, oh, we're running 9 now? Okay, yeah, let us get in there and refactor stuff. They kind of get excited about it instead of looking at it as this slog of unknown amount of time to kind of get it just to a place that they want, in this case being Laravel 9. Okay, so let's get all these cleaned up here. So really all we did here was just fix a lot of references in the application. And so for those reasons, I'm also just going to run this optimize import real fast on the app directory. And then we're just going to commit this as kind of just a cleanup approach. So let's do that. We got a lot more changes now, so I'm just going to do git add-u, and somewhere in my history we have a correct and optimize imports, which I like to kind of, again, use these default commit messages. So let's get this merged in. Yeah, I was making sure that prevent maintenance mode was correct while I paused the stream there for a second. So, but anyway, let's finish this. So back to that pull request. Everything else here seems to be pretty good. I'll leave these comments again for the client to review. So I'm going to go ahead and merge this. I'm going to go back locally, git check out that Laravel upgrade branch, git pull down all these changes that we've done all the way up to 5.4. So at this point we know that Composer install runs. The application from a static analysis perspective seems to be in a good place. There's no unknown references, or at least just a few to tell the client to check as far as that Nexmo package. And then we know that route list is running, which means they should be able to at least boot up their application and hit a few routes and either start getting whoops pages or hopefully the application's just running. And from there, they can poke around and tell me, hey, these things are still broken. Here's a screenshot. Here's the Laravel log. Help us out. Or again, because of the light at the end of the tunnel, they've got enough momentum now to finish the upgrade themselves. I won't necessarily go through these last bits, but as part of my process, you saw where I was defaulting a lot of files along the way. So what I would do here is go through this grep command. I would just grep the history for anywhere where I said default space. And in this case, here's all these different places where I might have defaulted files. I'm just going to look at one of these real quick. I don't want to go through the config ones or anything, just in the event that there might be some private information here. So let me pull this one up. I'll just double check it to make sure that there isn't. And if not, I'll kind of show you what I would do there, and that'll be the end of the stream for now. So I'm just going to kind of go out to GitHub, pull across some of this stuff. Let me just make sure there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing here. I think this is safe to show here. So let's go back to split screen. So basically what I would do is I would take that commit SHA, I would go out to GitHub and just kind of hack it into the URL with w equals 1, which means ignore white space changes. And this basically would just let me browse that default change set here, the diff of what I did. And so in this case, for the exception handler, I removed the don't report sections. It looks like it added some modern stuff for Laravel, and I ended up kind of killing this Sentry bit. So what I would do is I would take Sentry, I would go put it back in the app handler, and kind of go from there. And I would just go down these changes and really go to look for anything that needs to remain in the application. The verify CSRF middleware, any kind of events, any kind of routes. Again, any of those files that I might have defaulted along the way using this standard little commit message, I just crept them in the log, and I would just go one by one up this commit history until I looked at all of them and brought in those customizations, and then I would basically just commit those back to like backfill customizations is what I would like to say. And this is actually kind of cool because this gives you a single commit with a diff that kind of lets you know some of the things that you're changing in these core files, and you can kind of do a little sanity check, see, do I really need to be doing things this way? Is there a more modern way to do it that doesn't require, hacking this core file? So that's actually kind of a neat thing. But again, instead of doing this on the 5.5 shift, on the 5.6 shift, on the 5.7 shift, I just do it once at the end. I default the file, I leave myself a standard commit message that's easy to scroll through the log, see, and go quickly check that diff and just copy paste stuff in that I think still is relevant or still needs to be customized. And then I commit that back up. And again, I'm that much closer, that much faster with the whole upgrade process. So just the final little trick there that I do that you saw us defaulting these files in part 1. So with that, again, about an hour and a half in, but we took an app from 5.4 to 9.x. It's ready to review. There might be some changes left on, extra packages or whatnot. But for the most part, this should run. And that's pretty cool. So that shift, that's my process. That's how I do it when I do the human shifts. That's how I recommend people do it using Shift. And even if you're not using Shift, this would be, the recommendation. If you were kind of going to manually upgrade, I would definitely recommend kind of doing just that, jumping up to the latest version and then attempting to backfill and reference your own files. Now, you're going to have to do that with a lot more files. You're not going to get all the cool modern, optimizations that we had where we adopted all the conventions, again, anonymous migrations, class-based factories, tuple routes, all these cool things. The helpers, you're going to have to do a lot of manual work if you just copy it into a new application from being that old of a version of Laravel. But it's really the same process, and I think a lot of these tips could be used even then if you didn't want to use Shift or pay for Shift. But again, incredible value in my opinion, so check it out.